In this first video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Homestead is and why we're using it, and show you a brief demonstration. You might not understand what's going on, but I just want you to get the big picture of why we're using it, right? And then in another video, I'm going to actually go through the installation, because I want to try to make these videos less than 15 minutes. But if you read through this, right, it talks about how Homestead's a prepackaged Vagrant box, and Vagrant is an elegant way, right, to manage and provision virtual machines. So this this Homestead box comes with prepackaged software with all this stuff. We're not even going to use half of this stuff, but we are going to use the MySQL aspect of it, right? PHP, all that stuff, because our server, right, we want to mimic what's on our server. So that's one of the reasons why we're using it. Another reason is you have a personal working environment, okay, and you don't want to even touch anything on the server. So you just want to kind of set up a way to go to our browser, okay, and see what you've done locally, right? And then we can apply those changes to the actual server through GitHub, okay, if that makes any sense, right? The way you access the virtual machine is you come up here, and the way Homestead wants you to do things, right, is you give a name, .app, and then a port number. And I'll explain all this later, right? It doesn't make any sense, but let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I already have, for the purposes of this video, okay, I already have my Vagrant box booted up. I've gone through all that process. I'm not going to show you that here again, because I'm going to show you that in the next video. But let me show you what I'm talking about, how we have this virtual web server through the Vagrant, through the Homestead box. Why do I keep saying Vagrant? Through the Homestead box, and how the files will basically replicate any changes you make locally on your machine. You're going to update those changes automatically in the virtual server, and so you can see your changes made to your website, right, your virtual website, and you can see them here, okay? So let me show you what I mean. So I have two bash shells opened up. This one here on the right is what's actually in my D drive. My D drive on my desktop is my storage drive, okay? And I set up a folder called projects and movie code, and movie DB, whatever. The left side is what's actually on the virtual machine that's booted up, okay? So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Right, so if I do an ls or list, right, I can see that all these files, and if you haven't looked at the introduction videos to Laravel, basically whenever you install Laravel, clean installation, it sets up all these files for you, right? This is the Laravel framework's file structure, okay? All these files come pre-configured. And so if you look, right, within the directory movie database in the code directory under the virtual machine, it has the same files, right? So technically I didn't even install Laravel on my personal machine. I installed it on the VM, right? I'm going to show you that in the next video. And all those files replicated to this directory here that I set up in my D drive locally, okay? Now, that might not make a lot of sense yet, but let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I have my IDE fired up, and, this is what, now obviously, I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with the way that the framework works yet, but I'm learning a little bit about it, and I think I understand a little bit more than what I did a few days ago. But anyways, right, initially whenever you navigate to our public IP, it's going to send them to, right, the base installation. Actually, if you go to the public IP now, it sends you to this welcome page, okay? And that's what I have mimicked on the virtual machine. So it sends, right, this traffic here whenever we go to moviedatabase.app using port 8000. It's going to show whatever's on the welcome.blade.php. Right now, the only thing that's on there, right, is this Laravel 5. So let me show you what I'm talking about, right? If I make a change and I call this Laravel 10, I save it, okay, go back to Chrome, and I reload this page, well, then you can see, right? Now, this isn't, I want to make this clear, this isn't, I'm not even touching the server right now, right? I'm touching a virtual server that I have set up locally on my machine, right? I'm not messing with the server where we're actually going to have our final code and our final project, okay? Let me show you what I'm talking about. I can actually go to that server right now. Oh, well, I guess it froze on me. Hold on one second. Okay, I don't know what happened. It was freezing on me, but anyways. So yeah, so as you can see, this is the code that's on the server, right? I set up the framework to where, you know, you go to this IP, right, just like we did last semester, it takes you to the home page. And this is what the initial home page is going to look like with any Laravel 5 installation. So that's the server. I'm not touching it at all, right? I made the changes to my virtual machine, right? And so it gets updated. And when I go to that virtual machine using port 8000, I'll explain that later, it makes changes. So let me do another change just to show you, right? I don't know, whatever. Yeah, refresh, and there it is. Okay, so we understand that. So let me show you what it looks like, right, as the files are being updated. Okay, so I was in this resources file, right? So change directory. This is the file I was modifying. Resources. Oh, sorry, resources. Oh, and then we have views, and then right. So if I list, you can see here there's the welcome blade. That's what I was modifying in my IDE. It was this file here under views, and there it is, right? Resources, views, and the welcome page. Okay, so if I show you that same file, right? So I would have to go to resources, views, right? List out. There's the welcome dot blade. Remember, the left side is my VM. Okay, so within the shell on the VM, our web server, right? Remember that. So if I do Vim, right? All Ubuntu installations come with Vim, and I think they come with Emacs too. But I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with Vim or Emacs. So welcome, right? Notice you can see that change was updated, right? So this here, right, when I'm making this change, oh look, there's a swap file because it's open. But if I make a change here, right, so let me close out that other file just to show you. It's open quick. I make a change here locally on my D drive, alright, so let's go back to 10, okay, so we'll save that. It was 188 before, and now if I open up the file on the VM, right, well, there it is. It got changed. So it automatically replicates. Okay. So these two directories from movie database, and then this one is going to be, right, movie database. They don't have to be the same name. At least I don't think. I named them the same name so that I wouldn't be confused. But those directories are synced up. So any changes you make here gets automatically updated on the VM, which is our web server. And then obviously we want this web server so that we can see changes to our web code, and we can see what our website would look like. Again, that's the whole point of this, right? We don't touch the server at all. We develop in our own environments. We can test code that we've written independently, right? We don't need to be all huddled around one computer that's access to the server and trying to, pair programming. That stuff doesn't work. I mean, it worked last semester, but it's not going to work now. So this is the whole point of this, okay? I just wanted to kind of introduce people to that concept because I didn't really understand it a few days ago. And now I'm wrapping my head around at least the Homestead part of it. And I want to make sure that everybody's on that same page. Again, I don't know if I've said that before earlier in the video, but I just want to make sure that this doesn't hinder progress, right? Because I don't want somebody to come in and say, well, I couldn't get anything done because I couldn't get my working environment up. Well, that's not an excuse, okay? And I want to make that clear. That's not going to be an excuse, because I forgot who said it earlier in the presentation, right? We're going to assign people tasks, and we expect them to do them. And you need to have this environment up so that you can test your code locally on your machine. And then when we have our big group meetings face to face, right, we can compare code, and people can go to other people's machines and see the same file structure, right? That's another point. That's another reason I'm doing this, is because I want everybody to have the same file structure set up, so that if one of you asks somebody else for help, the other person comes in and looks at your machine, and they recognize the file structure set up, and they can navigate through your directories, right? And they can see the same directories and the same file structure. And it just makes things a lot easier. That's the whole point of this, okay? I just want this to be kind of like, just a transition that everybody understands and that we can all wrap our heads around, right? That's the whole point of this. So hopefully that little introduction didn't confuse you even more. Again, in the next video, I'm going to actually go through this whole process of setting up everything. I've done a lot of it already on my machine, and But I mean, it's the same process. I've done it twice already, and it's just, yeah, you just follow these, right? You read this, and then you run this command, bash, git bash, right, shell, and then, you just go through and configure everything. The hard part is just configuring these. At least the hard part for me was configuring these folders and the sites, right? I had a little bit of trouble with that earlier today, but I understand it now. I have the same setup on my laptop, and I want people to have the same setup on their machines, okay? And yeah, I'll explain that in the next video, but hopefully this kind of helped you understand what Homestead was.